Hello and welcome to the program. Before introducing our special guest today, let's take a look at the thought of the day. It's always great to start a day on a musical note. Let's see what we have in store today as far as the morning raga is concerned. Our special guest on the show today is Vanaja N Sarna, the chairperson of the Central Board of Excise and Customs. Madam, a warm welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Let's start off with the organization itself, CBEC, or the Central Board of Excise and Customs, as we all know. We know that it is into indirect taxes, its administration, collection and all. But for the lay person, for our viewers, just for the fact that they get to know it more lucidly, tell us about the organization. What is the role of CBEC?
See, the Central Board of Excise and Customs actually earlier used to be part of the Central Board of Revenues when both income tax and indirect tax was together. Now, as you know, we have the CBDT and the CBEC. Central Board of Excise and Customs, its core function is obviously collection of taxes on the indirect side. Till 1st of July, I can say this now that we are in the GST era, we used to collect taxes in customs, central excise and service tax, and some other taxes under other smaller acts and some cesses as well. After the 1st of July, as you know, both excise and service tax have got subsumed into the GST, the goods and services tax. So now we are really GST and customs. In both these areas, our core function is collection of taxes. Revenue is our concern. But over the years, and I've been in this service now for 37 years, so I've seen it going through so many changes. One of the very distinct changes that has happened is from being a very serious tax collector, which is still your role, you've also become a tax facilitator. So the idea now is that you have to look at yourself as a service provider actually, try to assist people and facilitate them to pay taxes in an easier way. So the focus has slowly shifted. A lot of simplification has happened over the years in terms of the kind of law you had, the rules you had. And it's not to say it's that simple, because taxation can never be simple. But at the same time, something which can ease perhaps the way in which you collect the taxes and the trust that you want to have in the SSE. So that's how we are functioning now. We are a service of about 70,000 people across India. It's very big. It's a big force. And as you might know, we have different levels of officers. So we have the Indian Revenue Service, Customs and Central Excise, where we recruit people on a yearly basis, which ranges from anything between 40 people to 200 people, depending on vacancies and need. And these officers join at the level of assistant collector, or which used to be collector nowadays, is now assistant commissioner, and move on and get promoted as deputy, joint, additional, and so on till they reach collector. The highest level, now of course it's called commissioner, the highest level that you can reach is the member of the board and then the chairman of the board. So as you know, it's a pyramidical structure, and it's not everybody would like to reach there, but obviously it's not always that age is on your side.
That's
so
right.
I think joining young, you retire before you reach that point, and the number of posts there are also not that many. So in a batch, as you go along, you find, you know, people move out of the batch, they go to other services, and as you would know, in the civil services, people like to make attempts to better their scores and to try to reach other services as well. And so you lose a lot also. But as you go along, you come to a level where you're a batch moving on. And then as it goes on, a lot of them retire, and there's this small number left towards the end of your career, as it is in my case.
What kind of a change had the department needed to undergo to embrace a GST in a very nice and professional manner?
The last 10 months has seen a huge step up, and I think you can't have something as mammoth a change as this if you don't have a combination of factors. So you need to have political will, that you want it. You need to have support of your stakeholders. So industry and trade must also want it and see it as something good. And then you need a supportive bureaucracy. So I think we've had all of them. And about 10 months back, when it became serious business, then it was speed-tracked completely. I don't think in government there was ever a second thought about not starting on 1st of July. And therefore, there was this huge push to get yourself organized, and to start with, of course, as you know, the constitution had to be amended. Then the laws had to be put in place. Those were put in place. The rules had to come about. Those were done as well. The rates had to be decided for a humongous number of commodities and services. That too was done. And as far as CBEC was concerned, it involved a reorganization of the way you did business to how you're going to do it now. So I, as chance would have it, was the member administration whose job was to actually do this reorganization for the department. So I joined on the board sometime in May 2015 and held this charge of administration, which deals with personnel of the service, and you know, it's a 70,000 strong service, and vigilance matters. So as part of this administration, it was a reorganization. So the entire country was mapped. I was also backed, of course, by a very robust Directorate General of HRD, Human Resource Development, where a very large number of people worked along with all the field officers. Every single chief commissioner from the various zones, and we have 21 on the GST side, were called for discussion on how to map their area. So it was to the last point. And the idea was that the smallest of your offices should be in the districts or even below to be able to provide services to the last man, as far as the smallest SSCO industry is concerned. So it involved a humongous task. And this is, I am just talking of the reorganization of the department as far as our GST offices are concerned. Then you have to do your systems tweaking or change. There was a big change. We had a big project brought out, especially to take care of the needs of GST, because as you know, in GST everything is digitized. So digital became the, you know, the buzzword. You had to change everything. We are the back end, so we have to support whatever comes in the front end. All the data coming in through the front end. So the SSC actually interfaces the front end. That comes to the back end, and all the requirements or approvals are all done online, and there's a time limit as per the rules, and then it is fed back to the GSTN, which goes back to the SSC. The distinction here now is that an SSC does not have to meet a tax officer. He only has an interface with the computer.
The big slogan, you know, one nation, one tax.
One market as well.
One market, yeah. But you know that somehow, although you know partially it has been achieved, but with so many tax slabs and rates, what do you foresee moving ahead? Can we have just, you know, eventually maybe one rate probably would not be ideal, maybe a two slab kind of a structure?
See, if you look at where we were under central excise or all the central and state taxes, and as you know, GST now has brought center and state together in a very big way. In fact, it's a perfect example of cooperative federalism, because right at the top, the GST Council that actually takes decisions that are to be implemented are consisting of and comprising of ministers of finance of all the states of India. So that is your first bridge between center and state. And it is headed by the finance minister, who is the chairman. You have the minister of state and the secretary revenue, who's the secretary also. So if you see the way it's been going, it's quite distinct from what we were. And you're looking at about 16, 17 taxes, center, state, as well as cesses getting subsumed into this one GST. That itself is a very big move. So to start with, and if you see, you know, there's GST in many parts of the world. Those have been studied as well. In many cases, you find there are only 2 slabs. And probably that's the ideal. But because we look at Indian society as one which is so varied, you have the poor, the very poor, the middle class, upper middle class, because we're a society which is so mixed and so such a variation. You need to cater to everybody. So it'll be a hardship if you put just 1 or 2 taxes at the moment. But as GST is rolling out, and I think as time goes by, the ideal would be to actually rationalize taxes and come down to perhaps just 2 slabs or at the most 3.
Do you also look at you know, anomalies in the tax structure? Also, like we have this issue of inverted duty structure in many commodities. Our industries face this problem. Do you do a regular review of these issues?
You know, by and large, when the rates are set, the intent or the effort is not to have an inverted duty structure. But yet sometimes it does happen, and by and large this is addressed, and in the GST regime it is certainly addressed, because you actually can think in terms of when there is an inverted duty structure, remember there is also an ITC, an input tax credit. And particularly in the GST regime, it's been taken care of that you are trying to ensure that there is no cascading effect of the taxes. So from stage to stage, you're attempting to give benefit of input tax credit, so that whatever tax has been paid at the prior stage is reduced by that much, and you only pay the balance of the value added. Through this way, you try not to have any such leftover tax. But even if you do, there is a system of granting a refund as well of the excess that may be in the balance. There are some commodities on which it is not allowed, but by and large, there would be a refund as well.
Like as usually, you know, economists say, by and large, across the world, the role of the government is like, you know, to collect taxes from the rich and kind of spread it evenly among the poor. In that way, indirect taxes are a greater evil compared to direct taxes. They are more targeted. Whereas here, you take the same tax from a rickshawala or a rickshaw puller, the same tax from a billionaire. So over the years, don't you see that, you know, it should be rationalized so that the burden on the common man, the poor man, is much less, and you do a better job as a Robin Hood,
right?
You know, the government.
Let me say that, you know, in fact, I think GST is just the perfect taxation system that is taking care of this. First of all, as you would have seen, the GST rates, there is 0% rate, there is 5%, 12, 18 and 28. That is the very, I think, issue that has been looked at. That things which fall in the 28% are by and large all the luxury items. So if you have a Jaguar car or you have a very expensive item, some of the even today maybe air conditioners and the more expensive items which are seen as used by upper middle class or higher classes are taxed at the 28%. Sin goods,
sin food,
sin goods. So like cigarettes are put in that category, or maybe pan masala. So where you charge, where you are actually trying to ensure that maybe by this sheer taxation structure, people
consumption
should come down. But if you see what is in 0 and 5% particularly, and you might have seen the CBC has done a lot of advertising campaigns on rates, and there have been full page ads coming for the common man to know, and you would see from the slab and the structure of the ad that you have this large number in 0, and then, you know, you have 5, and then it gets smaller and smaller in the band of 18 and 28. And by and large, goods of common consumption, food items and daily things, you know, are in that category which are lower. So soap and, you know, maybe hair oil, edible oil, all food stuff are kept in the lower category. And the idea was that the common man should either be where he was pre-GST, which means a revenue neutral rate, or get a benefit where actually it'll come down.
The prices will come
Yeah,
down.
so I think some rationalization already happening there,
Okay.
and always scope for more. So, you know, as it settles down GST and you watch the way the revenue is growing, and we're hoping for an increased tax base over the years, out of the sheer fact that it's going to be digitized, and we hope more people come into the fold. So hopefully, as you get unorganized people getting more organized.
Okay.
So with that increase in the tax base, is at the time you can look at rationalization of rates as well.
Ma'am, now let's shift gears and from, you know, hardcore talk about governance, taxation, all those issues, let's move away into softer issues. You know, our viewers always are keen to know about the persona behind the personality. So just for their benefit, tell us about your childhood, your upbringing.
I actually hail from Kerala, from a place called Palakkad, but I've never lived there. And I was actually born in Australia and lived the early years of my life till the age of 10 outside of India, and lived in interesting countries like Cuba, Africa, Burma. So very checkered and interesting childhood. And I have an elder sister, so we are just the two of us. Very close in age, just about a year and a half. So as children we fought a lot, and as we grew up we became very close, and we're like best friends really. So moving on from there, I was in boarding school in Bangalore for about 6 years. And then I moved to Delhi, and I was in college here. I was in Jesus and Mary College, and I did my graduation in psychology honors. Then I moved on to JNU, and I did my master's in international relations. And in between that, I did, interestingly, a 1-year diploma in journalism and public relations.
So you could have been here. You know?
I don't know if I'd chosen that. I think it was just to take a break from hardcore academics and move on a bit. But soon after I went into JNU, I also wanted to sit for the civil services exam. And as a child, I either wanted to be a teacher or I wanted to be in the services. So anyway, I was happy that I got this opportunity. And you know, Delhi University as such, as you would know, and JNU also, it's a perfect environment for somebody who's aspiring to be a civil servant.
That's right.
So, and I think the subject I chose also was such. And you know, in Delhi, when you study in these universities, you get a lot of confidence. Maybe the knowledge bank is very good amongst other universities, but I think there's a sense of confidence when you come to Delhi, and you're surrounded by a lot of civil servants also. You get to meet them, you get to know them, and it is dominated a lot by government officials. So I waited to turn 21, and I was in this big rush to sit for the civil services, and I did
it. You cleared it in the first attempt?
And I cleared it in the first attempt. I actually got the IPS, but I didn't see myself somehow as a police officer. When I filled the form, you will not believe, but I filled this form on the wall of JNU with at least 20 of my friends suggesting all sorts of services to me, and that's how I didn't know much about it. I just selected them randomly. But my dream was to be in the foreign service. I would have loved to have been there. So I actually attempted. I got the IPS. Managed to shift to customs, which I was at that time told is a glorious service. So I went with it, and I sat
you've risen
again.
to the top. You've risen to the summit.
You know, I think it's something to do with age. I would have actually pitched again, and I did try for the foreign service again, but I didn't make it. I again got the IPS. So I just decided to stay happy and be in the customs. And I don't think when I was 22 and I was in my first posting in Cochin that I ever thought of reaching the top. I think it was too far away. And I never ever thought about the fact that age was so significant, as I realized when I was maybe about 5 or 7 years back, when we have something called the civil list, where you start getting placed, and you see yourself in page 300 or something when you start, and suddenly you're in page 2 or 3, you know, and that's when you start looking seriously at where you're going. I think maybe in the last 5 or 6 years that seriousness dawns, and then you start looking at your own officers who start telling you that you know you're going to go to the top. And in fact, I was on deputation with the Parliament of India in the Rajya Sabha Secretariat, where I went
that
for...
would have been a rich experience, I'm
extremely. Sure. Actually, I went for 3 years and I stayed for 11. Here, I worked with 3 vice presidents. I was very lucky. I entered when Mr. K.R. Narayanan was there. And I was there till he actually left and went on to become the president. and Mr. Krishnakant came in, and then it was decided that there were lesser people at the top. By that time I was a joint secretary level, and they said, why don't you stay for a year or two? But somehow I saw through again Mr. Krishnakant's tenure, and then Mr. Shekhawat came in, and he said, why don't you stay for a year so that we settle down? And it was in this manner that I spent 11 long years, and it was an outstanding experience, I must say. So yes, it's been a checkered career, and of course in the department itself I worked in many capacities, and I've been posted in Cochin. I started in Cochin and then Delhi, and after that I was in Chandigarh, I've been in Chennai, I've been in Bangalore, so various across the country, and doing many things, you know. The department throws up, and this is something I always like to share with youngsters, that there's never a dull moment in this department, and the variety of work you see, because we were administering customs, central excise and service tax, and you could be in any of these. Then we have revenue intelligence, where I was also lucky to serve the DRI, and I was also in the training academy in Chennai. I also did some appellate work as Commissioner Appeals in Meerut for 3 years. So a checkered career doing many things. So like I said, there's never a dull moment. You never really do the same thing for too long, and that's what keeps you going in the department.
Ma'am, it's been really wonderful talking to you about the entire gamut of issues. Thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Every day we share a small fitness tip with you. Let's see what we have for today. Well, that's it. We'll have to call it a day and wind up the program. But before we do that, we would like to have your feedback, and our email ID is aajsavere@ddkdelhi.org.in. So that's it. Thank you so much for joining us. Goodbye.